Before we start the show, we want to inform you there will be major non-spoilers in this video. And with that out of the way, let's continue with our regular non-scheduled programming.
Radio Retro Future.
So a number of my viewers have asked me to discuss Fallout, a hard topic because the Fallout series have been discussed to exhaustion and every angle on it has been taken. Well, every angle beside that of a retro punk like myself perhaps. Fallout had an enormous impact on my life. I even have some memories of buying it. It was before the time of the internet, before game trailers, before pre-release speculation, so I never seen this title. But just the line on the box cover, a post-nuclear role-playing game, was the thing that made me buy it. The power armor also helped. I played all the PC releases ever since, even Tactics, which lore I quite enjoyed as some of the listeners of Radio Retro Future for Fallout may have noticed. I played Fallout 1, 2, Tactics, and I became ecstatic when Fallout 3 was announced. And no, I didn't mind it became three-dimensional open world. Then Fallout 4 was announced. Expectations were so high that when Fallout 4 was released, porn sites experienced a significant drop in views. And yes, in that game too, I pumped hundreds of hours, and that's probably one of the three Bethesda's Fallouts I may have played the least. Anyway, I'm not gonna review the game like I do in my other Steampunkish videos. For today's subject is Fallout Steampunk. Now, before people start storming the comment sections why Fallout is actually part of their preferred punk genre, let me explain some things. When I'm attending events, I might get a lot of questions from guests on what steampunk is. What a shocker, right? They may respond with, is Fallout steampunk? Hell, I've even heard steampunks use that label for the game. But then again, Fallout has been labeled many things like Atom Punk, Diesel Punk, Ray Punk, Plunger Punk. I mean, look at all the bloody plungers in this game. Anyway, the argument for Fallout being whatever punk seemed to hinge on one element of the game. That is its design. Aesthetics seem to be the central point on which anyone pins a label on this IP. But is that the right approach? To answer that question, we first need to explore how Fallout came to be in the first place. For those not familiar with Fallout, it's a role-playing game which was released by Interplay Studios in 1997. The stories take place in a post-apocalyptic United States that got destroyed by nuclear fire in the 2070s. Most of the population was exposed to the fallout, but some pockets of the United States citizens were safely hidden away in underground vaults. Well, safe is the wrong word, but let's keep it spoiler-free, okay? Just like our own Cold War period, people were expecting this war to happen for a very long time, and resources were dwindling. Despite this, the population of the United States kept consuming. To emphasize this atmosphere of Cold War in the myth of the American dream, 2077's USA looks like a futuristic version of the 1950s. Every nuclear age family has a household robot, a nuclear-powered Cadillac, and a holotape player. However, a decade-old war in Alaska against the Chinese just ended, and the losers, probably, didn't take it too well. Nobody knows who launched the first missiles, but the result remains the same: global annihilation. 2 centuries later, humanity still hasn't recovered, but humans have made their home within the ruins of the old world, which gives them shelter against radioactive storms and the dangerous mutants that roam the wastes. However, it aren't these radioactive beasts that are the biggest threat. No. Just like history teaches us, over and over again, war never changes. The Fallout universe is probably one of the best known and well done alternate history settings out there. The Pip-Boy, Dogmeat, and its quote, war. War never changes are staples of gaming culture and made its way all the way into the mainstream. Its lore is rich, its story is diverse, and its visual design is what makes it legendary. But it's also the cause for confusion. The Fallout franchise is an odd beast when it comes to genre. It's both alternate history, but also science fiction, just like the many punk genres it's compared to. But why does everything look so bulky, instead of sleek and miniaturized like what we're used to of typical science fiction? Well, this is because of a little thing called the divergence. It was the period in time of this timeline where, after the Second World War, instead of focusing on miniaturization, they were focusing on nuclear power. Things like the transistor that allow for miniaturization developed way later than in our universe. It's the reason why computers in this world seem to work on something from the pre-DOS era. But Cadillacs are still powered by nuclear mini-reactors. It's also the reason why anti-rad medication is so common among the ruins of the old world. Yeah, it may sound really far-fetched, but there is a reason why the designers of the Fallout universe did this. One of the themes throughout the Fallout games is that, despite all the challenges this new world provides for the remnants of humanity, like food shortage and rampaging mutants, red or blue carpet? What do you think? It are your fellow humans you have to be aware of. Rather, they are desperate people turned to raiding and cannibalism, or surviving organizations from their old world who want to restore civilization according to their own vision. Humans are a greater threat to the settlers of the Fallout universe than any other. This makes the universe of Fallout an interesting mix of post-apocalyptic science fiction and retro-futuristic cyberpunk. Fallout 4 even has this film noir vibe to it, and this is both expressed verbally as visually. Right from the get-go, you're on a quest to avenge your murdered spouse and rescue your lost child. And to do so you need the help of a grizzled detective you'll find in a place named Diamond City, who happens to be an outsider, just like you. And he happens to have his own quest for revenge. And on your travels you'll encounter other characters who are also tropes to the genre, like a nosy reporter who attempts to make a buck on your sob story and a nightclub singer. I don't think the film noir style storytelling is a coincidence. There are a lot of references to cyberpunk, and Blade Runner in particular, another franchise that borrows heavily from film noir. And this may have been something that the developers of Fallout wanted to do for a long time. Evidence for this might be a unique weapon you can find in the earlier Fallout games, called Dead Gun, which is actually the gun from the Blade Runner movie. But let's talk more about the general design of the Fallout games. The first things players will notice is the American Dream style design of the old world, with Art Deco decorations, Populux household machines and Googie architecture typically associated with the 1950s. Some factions, however, have this sleek, cyberpunk design going on that contrasts with the DIY or tribal appearance of the common wasteland settlements and fortifications. The stories of the Fallout universe exploit the conflict between the old and the new, tradition versus progress, high-tech and low-tech very well. Survivors of the Great War realized that it was technology that destroyed civilization. However, they also used the old world tech to improve their chances of survival. You know, I think I need another pinball machine. Between the scavenged equipment of raiders, you'll often find 10mm pistols and other old world weapons next to DIY pipe rifles, and some other settlements managed to recycle an old reactor to power their defenses and scavenge used terminals to recover knowledge from the past. Some locations are still patrolled by pre-war robots as well, guarding it against enemies who are all long gone. As a consequence, places such as these become very reminiscent to ruins of lost civilizations like in the Indiana Jones movies. A treasure trove ready to be reaped by an inquisitive explorer who wants to uncover the secrets that such places hold. Or just a simple raider out for personal gain. In either case, this explorer comes equipped with weapons from lost and new civilizations. If this description doesn't scream steampunk, I don't really know what does, but does it make it so? Now, the term steampunk was a play on the word cyberpunk. Books like The Difference Engine by William Gibson are described as cyberpunk in the past. Steampunk explores the what-if scenarios where technology has made an irreversible impact on history as we know it. Fallout certainly has that in a way, but unlike Steampunk, Fallout is set in the future of such an alternate history. Fallout's design, however, is very steampunkish, although some would call it decopunk or atompunk or whatever. But I am sure we can all agree that the design is retro-futuristic mixed in with a great amount of DIY. Fallout is known for its historical and cultural references. To name but a few, in Fallout 1 you can find a Nixon doll, in Fallout 2 you'll encounter the cult of Hobology, New Vegas you can find a gang called the Kings, of course inspired by the King himself. The Brotherhood of Steel has a lot of elements with the knightly orders, and then there's the Roman-inspired Caesar's Legion, or Kaiser's Legion. That's not including all the historical landmarks and buildings you can visit in the ruins of Washington DC, Boston, Pittsburgh, and neighboring cities. Fallout also has its own version of the Cold War and post-war fear of communism. Everywhere you'll find old propaganda posters against the communists and the Chinese. During Fallout 3 and onward, you'll also discover treatment of Chino-American citizens, which is really reminiscent of the treatment of Japanese citizens during WW2. And of course there are lots of posters regarding the threat of nuclear annihilation and the fallout that might follow. But here's an interesting fact. The idea of the first Fallout game came from Mad Max movies. A lone wanderer in the wasteland, created after the World War over the last resources. The leather armor in the Fallout games is actually based on Mad Max's own armor. You also need to wear this armor to acquire a dog as your companion called Dogmeat. You may also have noticed I haven't talked about the protagonists of the Fallout game. The Vault Dweller, the Chosen One, the Lone Wanderer, the Courier, and in Fallout 4 the Sole Survivor. Who knows what the next alliteration are gonna be. I'll wonder they'll add curtains for the next settlements. These characters are like Mad Max. Just like Mad Max, the protagonists of Fallout are not that interesting, but their actions change the world of Fallout. They help new factions come into being and ruined others. It are these changes that make the lore of this universe. The Vault Dweller and those that follow in his or her footsteps are there to explore the setting. Fallout is one of those few titles that actually succeed in making the setting this immersive that the development of the protagonist isn't that important. Max is like a guide for the audience to the world of Mad Max. In the Fallout universe, however, the Vault Dweller is the player. The players start their adventures in a vault that is similar to the world they know. It is a way of getting acquainted with the game before getting thrown into the wastelands themselves, where they will be confronted by mutants and raiders. What is new to these vault dwellers is new to us. It is why it is such a powerful moment when you leave the vault and the vault doors shut behind you, leaving you exposed to the elements. The world you enter is filled with secrets, waiting to be discovered by you, the player. Not only will you discover the bounties of this brave new world, you can uncover this alternate history, what the people of the past were like, and the true purpose of the vaults that you used to call home. It's not that very different from pulp stories from the 19th century, where entrepreneurs left England for the Dark Continent. And in both settings, the protagonists might do so with ray guns or a plasma rifle accompanied by a robot companion. They might do so to explore the world, discover new people and places, to grow, or simply to conquer. Oh darn, I don't have enough steel for my soda machine. In other words, Fallout continues a well-established tradition in storytelling and science fiction, but what about Mad Max influences on Fallout? Did you know that when Mad Max was released in 1979 it was described as exploitation? Even though post-apocalyptic movies weren't new in the genre, it hadn't found its identity yet. It was Mad Max 2 with its great cinematography, daring stunts and car chases which created the formula for which the post-apocalyptic genre is known for today. But what makes Mad Max IP so special is its lack of dialogue. Especially Fury Road was criticized for lack of character interaction, but maybe that was the entire point. This brings us back to Fallout's original design. The 1950s aesthetic didn't come to the developers at Interplay on a whim. They wanted to create an atmosphere of the Cold War, a pre-war society driven by paranoia-fueled patriotism. But to be fair, as the players will find out, their paranoia was not entirely unjustified. To recreate that society, developers looked to the post-war period of the United States for inspiration, focusing on Americana, tropes and contemporary design. But it being the 21st century, they had to add a futuristic feel to the world. But of course this isn't our future. This is the future according to the 50s that is still very much inspired by writers like Hugo Gernsback and what was predicted by Walt Disney. And by doing so, the developers created a kind of Gernsback continuum that crashed and burned. It is literally a future that was taken away. Mad Max, Hugo Gernsback and popular culture like Americana and complex historical themes are all interwoven, not just into the stories but also into the aesthetics. This method of storytelling is called Show, don't tell. Both Interplay and Bethesda worked meticulously on its world building. As a result, they could optimize storytelling with visual design so players don't get told what society was like, but they can see it with their own eyes. And that is what sets it apart from competitors like Rage and Borderlands, where pop culture inspired design is merely used as a way to skin different factions for visual variation. So, is Fallout steampunk? It really is the wrong question to ask. There is a reason why I always ask my guests on the show where they get their inspiration from. Now, while writing the script, I realized this diatribe was heading in a completely different direction, which has little to do with Fallout. So, to not waste people's time who are just here for the Fallout content, I decided to make part 2 of this video about what are we actually saying when we say this or that is Steam or whatever punk, and what I think of this approach. Fallout draws its inspiration from so many places it is hard to tell. Instead of focusing on genre, they focused on telling a story regardless of style. I mean, if they wanted to recreate Mad Max, they could have just recreated Mad Max. But instead they chose to give the world a story of its own. Now to finish off this topic, in my opinion, Fallout is a great addition to the post-apocalyptic genre more than any other, but its influences reach far into pop culture in general. It could have gotten many people into retro-punkish design, maybe even into steampunk or related communities. Please let me know if it has. So what are your thoughts? Do you believe that Fallout is part of any of the retro-punk genres out there like dieselpunk or decopunk? And please let me know why, without talking about the visual design. I wanna know what type of storytelling makes it part of dieselpunk or decopunk. And that was this for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave your opinions in the comments. And as always, make it your way. As for my opinion on the upcoming Fallout Vault 76, like many of you, I'm on the fence on this one. I mean, it looks amazing, but I'm not a multiplayer person. And I only enjoy games like Ark Survival Evolved in bursts. But in general, it takes too much of my time, so I'll get the collector's edition, but I don't know I will get far into the game. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Hey you enjoy Fallout 4 and you would like to have these billboards behind me within your settlements? Download the mod Old World Radio. These and many more assets will be yours. Also, you get to enjoy 7 hours of Steampunkish music and many more radio stations. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and download Old World Radio 2.